Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
I look up to the sky. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why? I don't wanna see you.
Well, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org for May 2nd. I think it's May 2nd. I lose track, truly. Every day it's Groundhog Day. Just another day slogging through this trench and waiting for something to give, something to break in this paradigm of total insanity that we all find ourselves in, day out. On the intro song, I meant to change that for this week because I want to get rid of the chemtrails term there. That term is increasingly toxic, increasingly harmful to our cause. I told the listener I would do that, and I did not get to it, but I will now. It's imperative that we stick to the science terms to gain credibility, and this is a game of chess. That's exactly what it is, and I know certain people are very fond of that term, and it's very descriptive. I don't argue that, but there's no basis to it whatsoever. So if we want to gain traction, it's imperative that we stick to solid moves. Again, just like we're playing chess. I played chess a lot as a boy. It changed the way I think. It changed the way I look at the world. I would recommend that for all kids. I've taught my kids to play that as well, and indeed we are in a chess game. Russ is with us, of course, today as always. I apologize for not letting Russ know last week that I needed him to reach me in my cell, so that was the reason for the delay we had while I was at the event last Saturday. But we'll press on now and get to calls as soon as we can, about a quarter after. So again, when people call in, if you can keep your mute button on so we don't hear background noises or we'll have to disconnect because it's very distracting for the rest of the callers and listeners. And if you can get your question to us as quick as we can so we can get to as many callers as possible. What does this all boil down to? I mean, the paradigm that we find ourselves in, what's the bottom line to all of this? And doesn't it come down to greed ultimately? It is about that. It's about people who want more than they need, more than their share. It's what it always comes down to. All the major traditions speak to this underlying insatiable desire for much more than we need. And those in power, of course, the sickest of all. And this whole notion that we've all been fed about quote unquote sustainable development. How do you possibly have sustainable development on a finite planet with finite resources? It's simply a contradiction in terms. And even for renewable energy, if you will, and I am on renewable energy, it's the best choice, I think, of the choices available, but how renewable is renewable energy? Is it truly renewable? The answer is no. It's patently no. In fact, you have chemicals used in the production of solar panels, and again, I'm not saying I'm against solar panels. They're a much better alternative than the other alternatives. But, for example, hexafluorophane is a chemical used in the production of solar panels. It's 12,000 times more potent than CO2 as a greenhouse gas. Nitrogen trifluoride, 17,000 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2. You have another chemical called PFTBA. The chemical name on that is too long to really try to pronounce. 71,000 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2. Renewable energy is nothing more than a fossil fuel extender. It's important for people to understand this. A lot of people think that, well, we'll just burn up all the oil, all the fossil fuel, and we'll switch to renewables. Not going to happen. So again, you can't have sustainable, quote, sustainable development on a finite country with finite resources. It's not possible. And all this notion that we're going to keep expanding. The machine, if it can't move forward, the machine, I mean the industrialized society machine, if it can't move forward, it will collapse and fall backward. And that's what we're in the throes of now. The power structure is doing everything it can to keep the illusion going as long as possible. Climate engineering is a big part of that. Climate engineering encompasses so many things from the power structure's perspective. It's certainly making us all sicker. It's making us all dumber. I don't mean that facetiously. We're absorbing very, very toxic bioaccumulative materials that are affecting our neurological system, our ability to think clearly, our cognitive function. It's truly confusing people about the true state of the climate, at least in the continental US, especially. This has caused so much confusion that it's made it difficult to keep the quest to expose geoengineering coherent in some way. So hopefully people, again, look past your immediate horizon, look at the bigger picture, take in more data. We have the push by the military industrial complex to recruit more to their juggernaut of insanity. How many have seen the military commercials that are so simplistic and so propagandistic? They're difficult to watch. When we have the end of the Navy commercials that they sign off with a big signature on their ad that says, the Navy, a global force for good. The very simplistic, we're good, they're bad. It's absolutely, it's hypocritical beyond comprehension. It's what people in America would like to believe, but it could not be more false. And I'm not trying to in any way slander our military brothers and sisters. I believe they are enlisted for the right reasons, most of them. And I salute their motives, but it's imperative that they wake up and wake up soon because we don't have much time. Another military commercial, a new one, shows people in all sorts of different uniforms crowded together in a city street. And it says, to get to you, they have to come through us. How incredibly false is that when our own government commits atrocities like 9/11? And anybody who doesn't believe that, you simply haven't done your research. You're simply blind to the fact that buildings don't fall down by themselves. The Twin Towers, for example, were designed to take multiple fully loaded 707 jetliner impacts, which is much greater foot-pounds of energy than the aircraft that hit them. Why did they collapse? They collapsed because of controlled demolition. There were people in those buildings for 4 years prior to that collapse. George Bush's brother was part of a quasi-security team in that building for 4 years prior to. They've been planning for this for probably decades. Building 7 collapse, free fall speed, 7 seconds. We're told because couches and chairs were burning in the first floor. How could anybody believe that? The same people that believed that official story look at the sky, see the atrocities we see, and somehow believe it's just normal because that's what they want to believe. They think that hiding will protect them. I spoke to a former friend. That was the end of our friendship, the conversation I'm about to refer to, someone I knew for several decades. When it came down to it, he didn't care if our government did 9/11, if that's what it took to keep him driving his SUV, to keep him in his McMansion, his upscale home. He didn't care. Didn't matter to him. Ultimately, if that's what it took to keep his party going, it was fine with him. That was the end of our friendship, of course. But we have a lot of those kinds of people in our country that will convince themselves of anything that they feel serves their own personal pursuit of pleasure. And those in power know this. They know this, or if it was not this way, they could never get away with what they're doing. Couldn't happen. We have a government by the criminals, of the criminals, for the criminals. It's not, we don't have a country with a government. We have a government that owns a country. That's a more correct statement.
Hello?
And this same government is droughting out its own population now at this point. We have an extreme situation going on in the U.S. West that is becoming cataclysmic. Let's look back at how many countries were droughted out prior to U.S. more or less takeover and occupation. We can go back to sub-Saharan Africa. For decades, those countries have been droughted out and brought to their knees. And I want to point out to people that although we've been told that global warming will increase drought That's not correct in a overall sense, not at all, because the atmosphere carries 7% more moisture for every degree of Fahrenheit warming. So you must have more overall rain on a warming planet, but we don't. Why don't we? Because of atmospheric aerosols, because of manipulation of wind and weather patterns. So now let's move on to the Middle Eastern countries. Every single one of them that has been destabilized in the recent past was droughted to their knees by climate modification programs. We have leaders of countries like Iran on the floor of the United Nations stating publicly their country was being droughted out by NATO weather modification. Our media doesn't cover it. This is a way to disrupt and destabilize populations. Now, what do we have in the U.S. West? We have the same thing occurring. Unbelievable drought, unbelievable heat, and they can create the heat on top of the drought. When we see the silvery white skies, again, not the horizon to horizon trails, the shorter bright trails, which are still spray. Many people in our own ranks need to understand this, that even these short bright trails are a particulate dispersion. This is not condensation. I encourage everybody to study the high bypass turbofan jet engine tutorial on the homepage of GeoEngineering Watch. So we see these silvery white skies that accompany massive high pressure domes. So when you microwave those particles and the friction and heat that's caused with them, we appear to get a lens effect, an increased UV on these days with silvery white sky, with incredibly intense heat with that. So what we have now happening in the US West, again, is this a prelude to the same type of destabilization and takeover that we've seen in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Middle East? Now we have Jade Helm shaping up. It should be extremely alarming to everyone. Again, all the various dots that we see starting to connect. When we have the GPSing of our residences, which I mentioned last week, why would they do this? There is no other reason besides nefarious purposes. There is no other reason. So that in the middle of the night, the brown shirts, or whatever they were called in World War II, can bang on your door and know exactly whose door it is. This is the future that we are free falling into right now. So the destabilization of the Western states with the protracted drought, it runs an exact parallel to what we've seen in previous decades to all other countries around the globe that were brought to their knees. Right now, it's imperative for all of us who are awake to prioritize this issue. And I know so many people who know what's going on and are not doing anything from day to day. This has to change. If we're to have any chance, it has to change. So, Russ, I want to hear a little bit about, again, what your current climate conditions are. You said you had some blue sky there with a few stripes overhead, but I think you're still relatively cool there. We're cooking here in the West, and that looks like it's supposed to continue. I encourage everybody to look at the article I just posted today. Open the links in the article. Again, this is not just statements that I'm grabbing out of thin air. I reference everything I post. So I hope that article is looked at in order for people to comprehend just how much power they have over the climate system in the case of the U.S. West to actually be able to suppress El Nino for a very long time at huge cost to the planet, the marine ecosystems. Everything they do is destruction. But they appear to have that much power. And I encourage everybody to look at that article. Russ, tell me what it's like where you're at, and we'll get to questions.
Well, it's a clear sky today, but all week it's been rainy and totally overcast all week. Today we actually have some blue sky, quite a bit of blue sky at 61 degrees right now. And the key thing that I can see is when I look up, I see all of those particulates. I've seen a few trails this morning earlier on, and they've spread out. And now if you look carefully, you can just see those little spotty, hazy spots all over the sky that most people don't even notice. But for those of us who are sensitive to it, we still feel the effects of it. And so it's still on top of us as it is every single day. The last 3 weeks, Dane, have been the worst long stretch in terms of the air intensity here in the Bangor area that I've seen since I've been back from Philadelphia a few months ago. It's been very, very intense here. And And so it's been a struggle, Dane, like usual.
Well, I want to drive the point home again that if we're not looking at a blue sky and white clouds, the sky's full of particulates, and that point needs to be driven home. Here, Russ, when you look at the horizon, if you have, for example, on our distant mountains, you'll see some cumulus clouds floating over those mountains, but you can barely make out those clouds because the background is white. It's silvery white. And just because there's no horizon-to-horizon trails doesn't mean anything. The atmosphere in those days is full of particulates, and it does appear that they are making an increased effort to not be quite so in your face and obvious. There's days when they can't get around it. But for the most part, at least over California, when we see the high-pressure days, we see more of these shorter, bright trails absolutely still spray. We have film footage of these shorter trails being turned on and off. We know from the high bypass, shouldn't be seeing anything behind these aircraft except under the most extreme circumstances. So people need to make that delineation that we really shouldn't see anything behind these jets. And Russ,
You can see the particulates in the air, Dane. I mean, when you look off in the distance, I mean, I remember growing up, I remember before this started happening, you could see crystal clear for miles and miles. If you're on a mountaintop, it was incredibly beautiful. And now we have a situation where you never can look more than like a couple miles into the vista without seeing that haze in the air. It never happens anymore, Dane.
It's exactly the same here, and I hope people go outside on nights like that with a bright light, and we've posted this before, to take a good look at just how much is floating around. It looks like it's snowing at night, and we're sucking that in with every breath we take. So for those that are focusing on other issues that they feel might be worth their time, I would again make the argument we're fighting for every breath we take. So it's imperative that we focus on priorities. And to give an idea of the kind of above normal temperatures that we're seeing on any given day when they're not able to nucleate a cool down somewhere, Russ, I'm sending you a current departure from normal high temperature map that maybe you can post into the chat room. And again, for people to understand what this map is, it shows the deviation from what should be normal. So when you see numbers like in the oranges and yellows, 20, 25 degrees, that's above normal. So to give people an idea of exactly what's happening around our country right now, around the rest of the globe, climate engineering is making a bad situation far worse, not better. Russ, can you open the phone lines? Let's try to get at some questions.
Absolutely. And for those who are on UCY.tv in the chat room, I want to encourage people who are listening to go check it out at UCY.tv/GW, and you'll be able to see the graphics that I post in a few minutes that Dane is sending me. The number to call in is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. We do have some callers waiting. Caller with your number that ends in 33. Who are we speaking with?
Hi, this is Jacqueline in Spring Hill, Florida.
Hi, Jacqueline.
Jacqueline, I've been at Spring Hill many times. I grew up in Newport Richey, just about 25 minutes south of you.
Yeah, I heard you say that on your show the other day.
Yeah, so
Well,
how you doing?
guys.
Good, Jacqueline. What's your question?
Well, I had something I wanted to share with the listeners about what I've been doing to get it out there daily, and I also had a question. So first thing that I don't know how however many people use Facebook. A lot of people these days. I've been going around on the videos that have the videos that circulate and they have over 1 million views, 2 million views, and I've been going around on those videos and posting the GeoEngineering Watch website and just something to catch their attention. So a lot of people go on there and they want to scroll through and they want to argue with people. So I know they're going to see it. I've already had replies on them. So that's a good way to get it out there.
It is. It is a good way. It's a good way to start spot fires of awareness. I agree.
Right. That's one way. I've also been. I'm a group. I'm in the group of a lot of yard sale groups and stuff like that. You can just go on there and post it. They might take it down, but at least you got it up there for a couple days. I've been doing that. And then the question I had, not sure if there's really a great answer for this, but I rarely see a clear sky here in Spring Hill. I'm all over the place, Tampa, Orlando. You rarely see a clear sky anymore. And today and yesterday have been completely clear. So I was just wondering if you had any idea why. Sorry, there's so much noise. I'm driving. Why would it be clear for the past couple days?
A simple lack of resources. They can't cover the whole globe every day, everywhere, all the time. Can't do it. We see the same thing in Northern California. We get hammered all spring. The moment a large cyclonic rotation appears in the Atlantic hurricane basin, we see them leave within hours because there's only so many aircraft. So, again, there's a multitude of reasons. If there's weather systems or patterns in other regions that are greater priority, then you won't see them overhead. They can't cover everywhere all the time. So there's a lot of variables in this equation, but the bottom line is they're spraying, I think, to the highest level that they're able to carry out given the resources they have. They're likely trying to add to those resources all the time. This is a race of insanity that can barely be comprehended, but that's what we do see. So, and that happens in all regions, depending on the weather patterns, depending on what's happening in other places of the globe, what they might be trying to engineer in a given region. So, and I'm back to your attempt to start spot fires of awareness. When people ask, what can I do? What can I do? This is why we post on the upper left of the homepage of GeoEngineering Watch the activist suggestions link and the flaming arrow link. That's for people to get their bearings on what they can do from their own home computer to start that kind of spot fire. The flaming arrow link is all prepared with an intro letter, all set to go. Posting on those kinds of sites where a lot of people are seeing them, Jacqueline, that's a great move. I hope people can follow your lead, and let's all keep starting spot fires because people are waking up to the fact that something is radically wrong. We need to sow those seeds as fast as we can so that we can get as many people to open their eyes as we can.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Dane, I'd also like to contribute this, and Jacqueline, this may be pertinent to what you're saying too, what you're asking. But it seems to me I've noticed I haven't kept track. I should start logging this. I would love to know if anybody else out there has. But they can't make everyday overcast because then people, I think, would eventually know something is wrong. Something is really going on wrong. So is it possible, do you think, that they don't let every day be overcast? They actually let there be some clear days for the purpose of, let's say, a psyop. They don't want the public to become too aware. Because, Dane, one thing that's interesting is it seems to me that a disproportionate number of weekend days are clear while all week it's raining. It's not always like that, but it seems disproportionate to me. I don't know. What do you think?
It depends on where you're at, and again, because we get hit just as hard on the weekend here as any other day. So it just depends on where you're at. And in regard to allowing a completely blue day to go through, I would argue that's not their first choice. That they, when people see that deep blue sky again, I think they start to question why they haven't seen that for so long. So I think if they could, although they wouldn't keep us completely covered all the time for the reasons you stated, Russ, I do agree with that. I think if they could, they would keep a certain level of haze there all the time, because now what we see in commercials, whatever news programs from any given region, whether it's CCTV news from China, RTTV from Russia, you almost never see a clear sky anymore. So, to some degree, they're trying to instill that as being the norm. So a lot of variables here. The bottom line is a lot of variables in this equation. There is no really set scenario.
Well, that's what I like to point out to people is that, when there's a clear weekend like this, and people will say, oh, well, that's just normal flight path. Well, are you trying to tell me that there's no planes in the sky today?
That's a good way to point that out. And again, encourage people to share that high bypass turbofan jet engine tutorial. That's something people should see, consider, and understand. And yes, either a heavily sprayed day or a clear day, both can be used as tools to point out to people this massive contradiction in our skies.
Right.
Thanks for all you're doing, Jacqueline.
All right, thank you. Hey, Russ, can you leave me on the line so I can listen to the rest of the show?
Yeah, sure. That's no problem at all. I can do that. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and thanks for the work that you're doing. Caller with your number that ends in 90. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, it's Paul from Colorado.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Paul.
How are you guys doing?
Good, good. What's going on out there? What's on your mind?
Well, we're getting sprayed heavy today. I just saw a military tanker at probably 10,000 feet. I mean, it was just spewing particulates, and I looked up and I almost just kind of had to laugh because it's so obvious, but it's so serious at the same time. But what I'm calling today for, what I'm calling is to point out another point of contact. His name's Adam Kokesh. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
I've done a radio show with Adam, yeah. I've done
Adam's
Adam's show.
Yeah. Oh, you've been on a show?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe I should just get off the line. But he's for those that don't know, he's a really inspirational activist, Iraq War veteran. He was in Fallujah, 2004. He's completely awake to the current state of our country, and but he's on a campfire tour right now. He's going around the country just talking about promoting the idea of freedom. But he's going to be in Oklahoma City tomorrow, or actually today, so if anyone's in Oklahoma City. But if you go on his website, thefreedomline.com, you can look at his schedule. I think he'd be really receptive if you approached him and handed out materials to him. He's a pretty strong voice.
He's the real deal. Adam is the real deal.
Yeah,
I would encourage, people, when this is another thing people can do from home, as what Jacqueline said, when you keep rattling the cage of someone like Adam to keep his attention back on this issue, because it's easy for even a very, very exceptional person like Adam to get diverted onto other issues. It's imperative that we continue to point out this issue in our sky, that if we don't deal with this, nothing else will matter. It is that serious. From our marine ecosystems, which I documented in the post I put up today, the total alteration of wind patterns, ocean currents. We have a stratified ocean now, which is pushing us toward a Canfield Ocean, which means the oceans die. They become hypoxic and anoxic, no oxygen. They're layering. Again, when the ocean dies, we die, not to mention the air we're breathing. The UV from every direction, climate engineering is sucking the noose around our necks. We have to deal with this first. So reaching out to people like Adam is imperative, and there's others that are absolutely worth reaching out to as well. So very good point. And Adam, again, the more we reach out to him, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Paul.
All right, thank you, Paul. Caller with your number that ends in 61. Who's on the line with us today?
Hello, my name is Rhonda. I'm in Anchorage, and hello. I appreciate all you do. I'm calling to say someone pointed out to me a web page that showed that there are like 6 or 7 heart facilities in Alaska, and I only knew of 2. And I don't know if, and so obviously they're doing more and more and more. And I just wanted to let people know that it's not about to stop by any means, except for people knowing about it and getting it to stop. But it's really like I just discovered an article by T.J. Coles that says it's weather warfare and a war on the environment. And I think that probably that's the thing that ties us all together, because I think they're just killing everything. And that's the plan, because it's really, most of it is warfare.
I would argue
anyway,
again, the result is the same, but if you try to tell a person that is the intent, their intent is to destroy life on Earth, you're not going to get very many people to wake up to this issue. And I would argue that even though that is the result, that we have to look at this like a cancer. Is it the cancer's intent to kill the host, for example, in the human body? Is that the intent of the cancer? I would argue no, that's not the intent. But the cancer is a headless, heartless, soulless beast, just like the cancer that's destroying our planet right now. Its intent is to expand, to proliferate, to control. It only sees its own immediate desires or needs. And the same is true here. And we have so many people that are a part of that cancer, without whose help the cancer would not exist. Again, most specifically, our own military brothers and sisters who have enlisted for, I don't doubt, the right reasons. Pardon me on that. Who have enlisted for the right reasons, I don't doubt. But they are being used for a weapon against their own populations, and they must wake up to this. And others as well. It's not just in the military. People in our own society who want their own party to continue, as the former friend I described earlier on. It's up to all of us to understand this paradigm was doomed from the beginning. And the military-industrial complex has accelerated that radically with their all-out weather warfare against the planet, against us. And again, you can't separate weather warfare from biological warfare. They're one and the same. So this, as we're introducing this to people, I think it's much more palatable for people to understand that in the quest for power and control, those that are running the planet, the global elite, and there's no question there's a core of global power elite, they simply do not care, and in many cases cannot comprehend the consequences of their actions, even to themselves. And I encourage people to look at psychoanalysis of psychopathic people. This is a common trait for these people. No matter how much genius they have in very malevolent ways, they have a common thread, and that is this: a near total lack of comprehension as to the consequences of their actions, even to themselves. Thus, we have Fukushima. And people ask for this example, and they always do. Why would they do this to themselves? Fukushima is a great example. Fukushima is totally out of control. We have 3, perhaps 4 reactors through the containment vessel. No technology to fix this. No end in sight. In fact, Fukushima may kill us all, and yet there's about 30 more nuclear power plants on the drawing board right now. That's the definition of insanity. So if you keep a few of these examples at hand, you can easily refute someone when they try to throw an argument at you like, why would they do this to themselves? So anyway, if we all polish our chess-playing methods, if you will, we'll become more effective in this fight. We can start more spot fires of awareness and reach critical mass sooner.
Yes, I appreciate that, absolutely. And I know that there is psychopaths behind it. I get in some arguments online. I don't argue, and I put all credible stuff out there, and some people still won't listen, or they won't look at it.
On that note, again, you can plant a seed and walk on, and I would encourage people also, don't keep banging your head against the same wall. If someone doesn't want to wake up, you're not going to wake them up. As the Chinese proverb says, you can't wake one who's pretending to be asleep. Can't do it. Plant the seed and walk on. And when it comes to the trolls, those who have made it their mission to, for whatever reason, whether they're on the internet being paid trolls or just people around you who are so far in denial that they feel if they can somehow convince you that this isn't happening, it'll make them feel better at some deep level. Those kind of people you're not going to convince. You're better off just walking away and leaving them behind. Move on to someone else who's willing to wake up.
Yeah, generally I do. I wanted to say also, though, that they are moving the military out of Alaska. They, strangely enough, so they're like pivoting toward Asia, but they're moving like lots and lots of actual, like regular military people and their family. They want to cut the jobs here, and I'm wondering if they're just trying to disguise all what's happening even more.
Not a lot of population density in Alaska. So I would argue, again, just like those that see clear days here and there, that there's not enough resources to cover all areas all the time. The military is spread very thin now with what they're going to have to deal with in the continental U.S. When you can't hide the gravity of what's unfolding, the population will panic. They know this. They're preparing for this. The population will know that they have not only been lied to, they've been assaulted biologically by the climate engineering. So again, once this becomes widely known, our paradigm will change immediately. And the power structure is preparing for this. So it's possible resources are being moved out of less population dense areas like Alaska toward more population dense areas in their attempt to put the resources where they think they might be most needed. It's hard to say, but again, our greatest hope lies in waking up our U.S. military brothers and sisters. We must wake them up to what they are being used for. Still there?
Well, thanks for yes. Hello. Thank you for talking to me, Dane. I appreciate it. And I'm out there trying to put messages online every day.
Thank you, and do it with confidence, no trepidation. Do it as if you're fighting for your own life or the lives of your children. Again, if your child was in some sort of danger, you wouldn't ask people if they can help. You would tell them to help, and that's the sort of attitude we need to have, because we're truly in a fight for life. We're fighting for our children's lives too. So thank you for everything you're doing. Do it confidently. With no trepidation at all. This is the most important battle of all.
Thank you, Dane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. Caller with our number that ends in 85. Who are we speaking with?
Hello, Russ. This is Gary from Tampa, Florida.
Hi, Gary.
Hello, Gary. Another call from my home area there.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on?
I've been active. Huh?
How's things going down? What's going on down your way?
Oh, I still been calling the Air Force. I did that letter thing you told me to start emailing them, and I'm just waiting for responses. As soon as I get the responses, I'll be passing them on to Russ, or if I could, email it to you. I'm waiting from the Air Force. There's two departments there: communications relations. For them. And sorry. And I have this was also in Virginia, the Pentagon. I emailed them, so I had 3 emails, all 3 to the Air Forces. I did call my local news station, and I told them, what are these planes doing with the lines in the sky? Can you cover the story? They told me, we don't cover chemtrails. So they know. Even that was channel 8, did I call? 8 on your side? And they called it chemtrails. I get it.
I know they always do, but this is why the terms are so important. This is why it's imperative that we learn how to play chess, that we confront them on that. And the more you can do that in a written email, so that then we can hold that over their heads, that why did you use a term that I never mentioned, and why haven't you investigated the science terms, which I did mention. So it's imperative, if you do this in a written email form, then we have something to hold over their heads. And this is the kind of spot fires you're starting. If you can reach out to other groups that can join you in rattling the cages of these people, you'll have more effect. So instead of you by yourself sending these emails out, if you spent some of your time recruiting others to march with you in that battle, other autism groups, Alzheimer's groups, spend your time rounding them up and then having all of them help you focus on these target emails, so that these people are getting 50 messages or 100 messages. It'll be much more impactful. So those few of us that there are marching at the front of this battle right now, we need to strategize back to the chess. Where is our time best spent? Should we go out and fight in the front line ourselves by launching these emails, which is fine to do when you have the time to do it, but also focus on recruiting others to join you, so that all of you can then launch these flaming arrow messages to wake people up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Dan, I actually had 2 people. One person I had met at the Orlando Global March Against GeoEngineering, that on the 25th. She actually, when I posted it on Facebook, she said, I want to do that, because I said, I reached 84 calls. I called McGill Air Force Base. I mean, they know me. You know what they called me? They got a nickname for me. They called me, this is Chemtrail Gary. Now I got a nickname out at the Air Force, McGill Air Force Base. I mean, that's what they named me. I just called it lines in the sky. Actually, other people call it chemtrails. I mean, they go, you calling about the let me see, you're calling about the chemtrails again today? That's what
But at least
know me.
They're talking about it, though. You've got them talking about it, thinking about it. And, and that's fine. And some other people protested at an air base here, and I think built some pretty good rapport with some of those people at the air base. There's only a few at the top pulling all the strings. Only a few. Everyone else is simply marching to their tune. If we continue to march to that tune, it's game over. people must wake up. We must reach out to those around us again. And the air base, the military people are the most important of all for us to reach out to in an effective, efficient way. Polish your methods, but everything you're doing matters. Again, back to the spot fires of awareness and recruiting others to help you. This is where the critical mass is so important. In the early onset of this fight, a lot of people seem to think that if some sort of lawsuit was filed in the very beginning stages, that would have fixed everything. We wouldn't have had the support to carry that at all up the field. Now we do. Now we do have the support to perhaps make that kind of filing, and that is being worked on behind the scenes from my end. We have the people involved now that can carry it out. I'll disclose more information as I'm in a position to do so. But in the meantime, it's imperative that we increase our ranks, increase those that are with us in this battle, and that's reaching out to the people who are being most harmed by this. Reach out to those people. That's where the most fertile ground is to plant seeds. We all need to think strategically.
Well, Dane, before I go, I actually have someone, two people here from Florida that are calling the Air Force as well, and I gave them the list of emails, so I'm passing it along. I'm just saying, whatever email you send to them, just forward it. Keep forwarding it to the next one, I'll just keep getting lists. I'm going to start next week. I'm going to start on the Navy. The Air Force told me that the Navy has more aircraft in the sky than the Air Force. They're trying to pass the buck, like saying that.
They do have a lot of aircraft in the sky, actually, the Navy does, but it's imperative that those letters be articulately written so that they get traction. And the template letter we have in the flaming arrow link on the upper left of GeoEngineering Watch can be an example. But keep those letters respectful, scientific, and articulately written. You'll have much better results. We have to do this in the right way. We have to play chess effectively. So anyway, hopefully that'll be an example. And Gary, thank you for everything you're doing. Keep us posted. We'll try to grab a couple more calls now, but please keep us posted of your ongoing results. Try to record the interaction with emails, written emails, so that we can see exactly what's taking place.
Okay, thank you, Dane.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Anybody who'd like to call in, we have open slots available, 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Early on in this, Dane, I wanted to get a particulate counter, and I researched particulate counters for the air, but none of them that I found can measure particulates low enough to capture what we're dealing with. Do you know anything about? Yeah. You
can't. I mean, I contacted an air filtering manufacturing entity, and I purchased for $1,500 a small filtration device with an electronic meter that measures exactly how many CFM of air it pulls in to gain the filter sample. The technicians there felt it would work, but it didn't, because the filter medium that goes on that is so fine, it can't even suck air in. And it keeps sucking the filter in the machine. So I have a brand new air filter machine here that I got to try to do this. It's simply extremely difficult, given the size of particles, to try to effectively filter them out. The power structure knows this. That's why all of this goes under the radar. That's why all the people that look at the air quality testing by their local agency that says the air is good, it's getting cleaner, it's absolute nonsense, because the size of particle they're testing for is like a boulder in comparison to what we're dealing with here. When they're testing for PM10, 10 microns, or at best PM2.5, 2.5 microns, particles exponentially larger than what we're dealing with. So all of this mountain of metal and toxic materials goes completely under the radar. So we're back to a dust test. And again, this is something that can be done with perhaps a 2-foot by 2-foot plate of glass or mirror pointed skyward over the course of a 24-hour period. They have wipes at labs. Most labs have it's a little packet that has a wipe in it. It's a dust wipe. It's meant for this kind of testing. And you can wipe off a clean surface like that after 24 or 48 hours, and then they melt that whole wipe down and test for what should not be in it. And that will give you some idea of how much is falling on you. But the bottom line is, in regard to the testing, some of the labs we no longer trust. We know they're giving false reports. The lab in Northern California that we've counted on, the former owner died a little prematurely, by the way, which I don't know anything else about that situation, but it was a little interesting to us. Now the new owner is telling people it's normal to have aluminum in the rain. This is the lab owner telling people this. How could we possibly trust a test from that lab? bottom line is we know this material's there. We have tests from around the globe. Our time at this point is best spent sharing the mountain of data we already have, which would win a court case with any objective jury. We have a mountain of data. We have film footage of these aircraft spraying into the argument right there. So we need to just wake people up to this issue right now. That's our single greatest priority.
You know, I also find we did a dust test here in Bangor where we just took filter out of a 24/7 air filtration device. Now, of course, by default, these types of HEPA filters will not capture particles this small, but we wanted to say that, you know, there probably are some of these small particles that will get trapped nonetheless, and we did find large amounts of aluminum. We found mercury and other exotic metals in tests like this, so this might be helpful.
You will trap some. In fact, you have particle coagulation. You have a little bit of music in the background from somebody. If they can mute their mic, I would appreciate that. We have particle coagulation. Even bigger filter mediums will catch this.
Let me ask a question for Dane.
So, okay, can you hang on just 1 minute?
Yep, we'll be in just a second.
Okay. This is, again, the material can be captured. It's just to have an accurate measurement of which is more appropriate for, say, a peer-reviewed study. You have to know exactly how much air it took to gather that material as measured in cubic feet. So that type of test is hard, but the fact that proving the material is there is not hard. Back to the bigger picture again, I stress this to everyone listening. There are things they cannot hide much longer. The oceans are collapsing. We have climate collapse right now happening around the globe. We're going to see some pretty astounding things in the coming weeks and months. The preparations that the power structure is making right now to deal with a population that's waking up are clearly underway. Time is not on our side, so that's where every day needs to count. Let's take the mountain of data we have and wake others up. That's where our time is best spent. Go ahead, Russ.
Absolutely. We have callers. Hang on for just a quick second. I'll get to you in a second. Also, we have room for other callers, 718-717-8296. We have a question from the chat room. Somebody said, why can't someone capture what's in a trail by hiring a plane? I can address that real quick because I actually interviewed someone a couple years ago from Sweden who did just that. The thing is, it's notoriously difficult because you run into the same problem, because when you're trying to measure this stuff, first of all, you have to have a way to draw it into a container, and they finally had a container with a vacuum in it, and then they removed the vacuum. You have to have it outside of a plane, and the big problem they were having is getting permission to fly at the altitude where the trails were. But even though they ended up flying below trails, and they still captured barium and aluminum in their containers, and they didn't even go through a trail. So
we have the aerotoxic sickness happening with airplane passengers and so forth. And here's the bottom line. No matter how many tests we produce, those that don't want to face this issue or have a vested interest in not facing it or denying it, nothing you show them will convince them of anything. If we have film footage of this happening and that doesn't work, nothing will convince them. So we need to move on to those that have a vested interest in waking up, not in staying asleep. So this is where, again, marching forward, we have mountains of data, film footage, more than enough to wake up anyone who has any interest in waking up. We need to focus on those people. Let's try to grab as many callers as we can. Russ.
Absolutely. Caller with your number that ends in 40. Who are we speaking with?
Yeah, guys, it's Steve Chamberlain up here in Kenai, Alaska.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Pretty good. I just wanted to mention to everybody what's happening to our forest here, and our lack of snow last winter created this everything is dry, and all the grass up here is still standing, full standing dead grass because we didn't have any snow. And it reminds me of the video you posted last week about the Siberian fires. And we're set up for a big fire here in Alaska. So
it's coming. Last year in Canada, Steve, 600% more forest burnt than the 30-year norm, which is already high. So we're headed for the same thing here in Northern California. You have the local experts. I say that with serious skepticism, whether it's USDA or Forest Service or Park Service, who claim the beetles are killing the trees and this and that. The trees are dying. The largest single effect mathematically is climate engineering, because we have shredded ozone layer. toxic rain with bioavailable materials, protracted drought due to the aerosolization of the atmosphere and the maneuvering of jet streams, as I documented in my article today. So the single greatest factor killing the trees from many directions is climate engineering, but we have people who have a vested interest, again, as I just mentioned, in denying that, into helping to hide that. So we need to work on those people who have an interest in waking up, Steve. And I know you've done a lot in your area, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you put together for a video and an article of what you're doing, the people in your restaurant, as you know, perhaps you can videotape your interaction with them a little bit. All this is hugely helpful to inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, one quick comment too is I live on a small lake up here. It's about 300 or 400 yards across, a little small pothole lake, beautiful lake. And every year for 17 years now that I've lived here, the ice goes out on May 9th or the 10th or the 11th. It's always the 9th, the 10th, or the 11th. The ice went out about 6 days ago here, which is 2 weeks early. So that's the sign. I mean, that's something. It's always the 9th, the 10th, or the 11th of May that the ice goes out. And this year it went out on the 26th of April. So
I'm surprised it lasted that long, because you even have Lake Baikal in Siberia. You had fires raging around that lake. It's normally frozen solid till June. Fires raging in early April, as you saw from our post. So
we're set up for the same scenario here. People need to see it. It's truly, we're set up for a big burn here in Alaska. I think it's going to happen this year. We're going to see a big increase in fires up here. So
I'm afraid you're right. And again, this is where, back to the cancer of what climate engineering is. Those that want power and control, that have a vested interest in what's going on, all the people in the chain, those that manufacture the aircraft, the spraying mechanisms, and everything else, they simply are focused on their own personal position. They're cancer cells, if you will, that are trying to proliferate their own situation with virtually no regard to what's happening to the whole, to the host, which is our planet. So
I'm in this fight till my last breath. I'll never give up. Thanks, guys.
Me either, Steve. Thanks for all you're doing. Looking forward to getting an article from you and a video.
All right. Thank you, Dane. Thanks, Russ.
Okay.
Steve, thank you so much. Good to hear from you again. Good to hear of all the things that you're doing and reporting up there in Alaska. Caller, with your number that ends in 25, who are we speaking with?
Lori, Shasta, California.
Hi, Lori.
I have a quick, I guess, a question for everyone as to the intensity of what feels like fiberglass on our skin. Last weekend I was out there with the Earth Day event, and I was so glad that you were able to participate. I had a hat on, and it still was on my face, and it intensifies tremendously whenever I'm in front of my computer screen. So I don't know if there's a combination of a new deposit from what they're spraying, or it's just drier out. I don't know. I tend to get most of my news from the radio, so I don't have to be in front of the screen. But if you could remind your listeners that you have on your site from a while back detox things, like to take off our shoes, wipe off ourselves. Our pets are dragging them in, and then there they are sleeping on, our sofas and beds and whatnot. So it's a way to kind of keep us clear while the cause gets a little bit more intense. But I've definitely felt it. Just it feels like fiberglass. It's extremely itchy, and I don't know if there's any medical health people out there that might have some further tips.
Well, certainly we're all more electrically conductive. There's no question about that. We can't not be. We're absorbing conductive materials. So anytime you're around any source for RF signal, you're bound to feel something. In regard to detoxing, a lot of people are doing a lot of different things. I'll soon post an article called Staying Healthy in a World That Isn't. I'm just going to outline what I try to do, and again, not as an only way at all, just as methods that I take. And I think there's certain basic fundamentals to purge the system. Sweating, for one. I mean, working out or finding a way to sweat and clear your pores with a lot of clean water intake. There's other chelation methods that anybody anywhere, go to your local health store and talk to the nutritionalist there. Get on a chelation program. There's certain basic fundamentals that can make a huge difference. And regular exercise is one as well. Again, there's no healthy, but at the same time, we have to fight in raising this awareness. There's a lot of people that want to sit and think happy thoughts, which is fine to some degree, as long as you're putting the rubber to the road. I'm all for positive meditation, not against that. But if that's all you're doing, you're not doing enough, period. And Lori, you're in the thick of the trench all the time. I mean, you and Ellie, set the booth up and gave it your all. And, in addition to having a positive outlook and trying to meditate, if you will, you're actually making the wheels turn. And the combination has to be there. So grateful for everything you're doing. We'll try to get more nutritional information out as soon as we can.
Thanks for your help, Dane.
Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Russ. Okay, bye.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you. It's good to hear from you. Caller with your number that ends in 50. Who are we speaking with?
Alan Davis.
Hello, Alan. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I've been really busy, so I haven't called in a while. I've had this question, and keep forgetting to ask. Some time ago, I saw on your website where there was 2 counties, or a city and a county or something back east, that apparently banned GeoEngineering. And I don't know if you remember or you're aware of it, but I haven't been able to find it, like it's been moved or something. I don't know if you moved stuff to archives or something, or I don't know. But do you recall what those counties or cities were back east? I think one of them was the county of New York.
That was from, I think, New York Skywatch, and they didn't actually pass anything to my knowledge. They tried and got the same resistance that all of us get. So I can't think of the county, but if you Google, I think, or maybe it's Long Island Skywatch, that might be what it is. But I don't think anything actually passed, Alan. And on a more positive note, we do have some wheels turning in Rhode Island that many people listening might have seen that legislation. If you Google Rhode Island legislation geoengineering, you should find that file. I'm sending data. I've sent 3 packages now to one of the people on the committee that drafted that. So let's hope that something comes of that. But that's the start. And again, if we reach critical mass, wheels will turn all over the country as people realize they are going down with the ship with the rest of us. That's why I have several attorneys now that are helping us to formulate filing a legal action in the state of California is our objective right now. But they're involved because they know their lives depend on this as well. If we had not reached critical mass, they would not be involved. It would be a matter of trying to hire someone, which we don't have the resources to do. So if we can simply keep pushing toward critical mass, then we'll have wheels turning all over the country. And I encourage everybody, make every single day count in that regard. Your points, Alan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to hear if you ever get any information on anybody like that who's doing anything legally with it. I'd like to really see that emphasized a little bit so we don't miss it, because I'm in the process of getting FOIA and public records requests on the history of geoengineering. And
anything you have, we could use, because what I'm discussing is going on, and there's some people involved in this effort we're working on that are very high level. They're staying behind the scenes because there's great risk to them. But we could use anything you can turn up. I don't know of any other substance, anything else going on right now. I hope there is something else going on somewhere else with other attorneys, but I don't know of anything else. But we could use anything you can turn up. Before we run out of time here, Alan, I'm going to sign off real quick. And again, I'll hope to get anything you manage to produce. Everybody out there, every day counts. Our situation is unraveling very, very quickly. It's up to all of us to chip in and make our voices heard.
Thank you, Alan, for calling. Thank you, everybody, for calling. Scanner on behalf of GeoEngineering. Watch video every Saturday.
On the Tracks you can catch every Monday night and Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time